So, the anime for My Hero is finally back after another 2-week break, and it came back with a vengeance, with great animation, great action, as well as the reveal of Deku's final quirk. All of that and more will be explained in this breakdown for My Hero Academia. So, let's dive right into it. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Drew, and I'm here to do My Hero Academia breakdown for Season 7, Episode 13. There's a lot that we have to go over in this episode, so let's just dive right into the breakdown and really talk about why this episode is great. And to start off, the episode titled A Chain of Events Across the Ages covers approximately 3 chapters, chapters 367, 368, and 369, with the title of the episode coming from chapter 369. And to start off, the episode is very slow. It starts off with a lot of recap at the start, where we get to see the other battle locations, as well as the heroes and the villains that are going to be fighting in those locations. As well as we get Deku narrating this entire scene, as we get reused scenes from the past few episodes, including the scene of All For One fighting against the heroes, as well as Dabi being rejuvenated with new power. And even with that, when we start to get into the episode proper itself, we still get some reused scenes of Deku talking to the first user Yoichi about All For One, but we do continue from that moment, as well as getting a different perspective of what happened before Deku hit Tomura All For One with that huge smash, which is also reused in this episode, is that we get to see that the fighter jets from America came over to help Deku get to the flying coffin, as we do have one of the fighter jet pilots named Ethan coming to his rescue, saying that they're only here because Star believed in Deku, and that they are here to bring him to the location where he needs to be. And let's just say that this sequence of action of Deku using Black Whip to swing across the fighter jets and to give him enough speed to land that final hit was done amazingly in this sequence. And this is only the first of many different sequences in the episode with amazing animation, so stay tuned for that. But yes, as we got the scene of Deku fighting against Tomura, we also get to see Deku beginning to lose control after he sees all of the potential death and destruction in front of him, from Bakugo having an open chest wound to seeing all of the heroes that Deku believes to be dead on the ground, as we see that his eyes begin to flicker and glow with energy as just Black Whip and Smokescreen and all the other quirks inside of him are just let loose, very much like how it was in the manga. And as Deku is losing control and Tomura All For One is taunting as this is what he wanted, Muriel tries to come in and calm Deku down by telling him that everything's going to be okay, that the heroes are still alive, and that Bakugo's life is being saved by Edshot. From what we're getting in the anime as well as what we saw in the manga, Muriel does not necessarily talk Deku down, but Deku remembers the words of the people that are important to his life and gave him very strong and important advice to control his heart, and that is what allows him to eventually calm down. And this is emphasized more in the anime itself by showing that even after Muriel spoke, Deku is reflecting via flashbacks of both Ethan as well as All Might. And a slight change from the anime to the manga is that in the manga we get to see Deku's eyes between the sequences of the flashbacks, but in the anime we get the sequence in order until Banjo begins to talk, as we see the inner vestige energy that represented Deku beginning to clear up as we see his eyes becoming clear, which is more of an emphasis and a really explanation that Deku is coming down from this rage on his own and not necessarily by the influences of Muriel. But even after all of that, Deku finally comes down and we get to see his new fighting style look for this fight, as we see that his eyes are still glowing blue. Electricity is sparking off of his body, as we see that Black Whip is covering around his mouth, very much like Aizawa's capture scarf, which is very important because of how Deku uses it. But even from this moment, we still get to see some more stuff from All For One as he tries to convince the heroes that Tomura is gone, but that seems to not be the case thanks to Muriel, who reminds Deku that the more damage that All For One takes, or Tomura All For One takes, the more unstable that he gets, and that even Nana confirms this because she sees the fingertips of Tomura All For One, one of them resembling her own son, showing that Tomura is still very much in there. And this is where the fight begins in earnest. And let's just say that from here on out, the fight just looks amazing, even if it's just within this one episode. And I'll try not to go into every action sequence, but just to let you know that every sequence that we get in this episode is bare minimum good. And we actually start off the action sequence with a good first look at the new quirk that Deku is going to be using within this fight, Gear Shift, which is also the final quirk that he has unlocked of One For All. So from what we're seeing in the fight, Deku uses Gear Shift, which you can tell from the name of the quirk itself, that he's actually using it to literally shift gears as if he's in a car. And by doing so, he's able to move faster and hit Tomura even more times within seemingly one singular instance. And the anime makes this damage even more intense by seeing more blood coming out of Tomura All For One's mouth. And even after those massive hits, we do see Deku use a new move with Gear Shift called Overdrive as Deku slams Tomura into the ground. And it's at this point that I want to point out how Gear Shift is used in the anime, where we see that Gear Shift is being used by Deku and it's being used with a type of bluish energy that surrounds him, creating a sort of after image technique, which is the implication of how fast Deku is moving at this moment, and how that blue tint is very much synonymous with Kudo himself, the second user, being a blue vestige. And that even with that attack itself, it's implied that thanks to using Gear Shift, Deku was able to use 120% of One For All's power. And that there is just so much color and action within this sequence, even to the point where for a split moment as Deku is landing that final attack, everything seems to be moving in slow motion, which is very apt for the quirk of Gear Shift, which we later learn in the episode in more detail is able to slow down and speed up objects. And that within this fight, Deku is not just using it on himself, but also on Tomura All For One. But even with that, we don't just focus on the fight when it comes to Deku. We also get to see a lot of stuff from All For One and Tomura All For One, because he does have a moment of reflection where we actually get to see a flashback of All For One fighting against Kudo for the first time, where we get the first establishment of Kudo's quirk and how it has grown and evolved over the years thanks to One For All, being able to just control small objects to even control the cells within Deku's body, going from just controlling non-living objects to even being able to control the living themselves. And how we do get a sort of clarification on what was used in the anime to attack All For One in this moment, because in the manga, it seems to be as if it was a small bullet, but in the anime, as well as later on in the manga through a little bit more examination, it seems to be more akin to just a support item that Kudo uses to really use his quirk to be the most optimal way he could have at that time. And as the battle continues, Deku's glowing blue body in the air after he begins to land more attacks on Tomura All For One symbolizes not only the quirk itself, but the user of One For All, Kudo, which is going to be something that we're going to see even later on in the episode. But yes, this is where we got the explanation of Gear Shift, as well as we get to see the quintuple smash as we start hearing the most iconic song of My Hero Academia, You Say Run.
小さいものにしか付与できなかった変則はその解釈を拡大し細胞一つ一つにま
And when I heard the song, I knew that this entire sequence is going to be hyped. And spoilers, it is, and it was. Because while All For One notices that Deku's punches were weaker, most likely because he wasn't using Fajin, he prepares a counterattack on Deku, which we get to learn that Gear Shift is able to ignore inertia itself and allow Deku to come to an immediate stop before Tomura All For One can actually attack him. Also, something else I want to bring up when it comes to Gear Shift, this actual scene where we get Gear Shift being explained is actually from the volume extras of My Hero Academia, very specifically 37, with the action that Deku is actually doing is very similar to shifting gears in a car, ergo Gear Shift. And at this moment, that's what he's visualizing when using Gear Shift. Once again, very cool thing that the actual anime did, which is take information from the volume extras and added them to the actual anime and the story itself. And it's from this moment we get to see pretty much Deku use all of the quirks at his disposal in sequence to land a massive hit on Tomura All For One. From Danger Sense to dodge the attack, to Smokescreen, to prior using Fajin and Gear Shift, even using Float and Black Whip to pull Tomura All For One out of the smoke. all of them working in tandem to benefit Deku to potentially finish off Tomura All For One in this moment. And all of it done while Yusei Run plays. But from there, we do see Deku preparing the final smash that he's going to land on All For One in this fight. At least as far as this episode is concerned. But what is interesting is the symbolism around this punch in both the anime and the manga. Because in the anime, we clearly see that the users of One For All are all preparing a punch very much like in the manga. However, we get to see the actual energy and passing of One For All from Kudo to Bruce, Shinomori, and then Banjo, in Nanashimura, Toshinori, and then right to Deku as they all prepare to fight Tomura, as this is the fight between All For One and One For All. So I'm very glad that the anime really added upon that to really give a little bit more weight to the symbolism of the fight between One For All and All For One. And we see the punch land, and the anime shows All For One trying to counter with a punch in comparison to what the manga showed, as we see Deku land and destroy the arm as he lands a decisive hit on Tomura All For One and his body. And what's interesting about this is that we get to see a rainbow of all of the colors, which once again is representing Deku using all of the quirks in the fight, and by doing so making this rainbow that even permeates the barrier of the flying coffin. And you would think that this is where the episode would end, but you would be wrong. Because as finally All For One and One For All are able to see each other, Yoichi is finally able to see his older brother, they begin resonating as we get to see that Kudo is telling Deku that he can't let up, that he has to continue the fight, as we see and hear Deku breathing heavily, implying the backlash that is potentially associated with Gear Shift. And as this is all happening, Tomura All For One is once again reflecting on the situation and how while Deku has been able to use his quirks, he has been able to use none. And that if this is all being set up by what the heroes have done to set up their victory, then the same can be said about the villains. As we cut over to the different fighting locations from Toga to Dabi to Spinner, All For One believes that he still has a chance of winning, as we see the final scene of this episode is Spinner surrounded by destruction, implying that Spinner is going to be the deciding factor to change the war in the villain's favor. But yeah, this is pretty much my breakdown as well as my review for My Hero Academia episode 13 of season 7. And let me ask you this. What did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Probably my favorite part of the episode is the fact that we were able to finally hear Yusei Run in this episode, in this season, and we haven't heard it in a long time. But yeah, that was my favorite part. And what do you think is going to be happening in the next episode, even based off the previews? Leave your thoughts down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz. Hopefully, I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!